Well, the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation is a national nonprofit organization. It's been around since 1922. Offices in 11 cities, and they're all mostly in major metropolitan areas. So we have a test office in Seattle and San Francisco and LA and in Denver, and then on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. and Boston and New York and many other cities as well. There's 11 offices. And we are a national nonprofit organization. We actually do a lot of research in addition to the aptitude testing that we do, and we just help people identify their natural strengths. Aptitude testing involves measuring your natural abilities. So these are different than acquired skill or knowledge, where you can gain skill or knowledge in any area, but your underlying aptitudes of what naturally comes most easily to you tends to remain pretty stable over time. So there's many different factors that can play into what makes a job satisfying for you. There's the people that you work with, the hours that you work, and the money that you make, and as well as your interests and values and other important things like that. But we find that one of the most important things in terms of job success and satisfaction is whether you're able to use your natural abilities. So then the next question is, how do you know what your natural abilities are? Most of us don't know. So we try to guess what we're best suited for based on just things that happen to us throughout our lives. We'd get an A in a math class one year in high school and think, maybe I should be an accountant, maybe I should be an engineer. Or we look and see what our parents do. Oh, my mom's a teacher, maybe I should be a teacher. So most of us just trying to guess what we're good at. So our testing is designed to take some of the guesswork out of this process and have it not be so dependent on happenstance and luck. I had one client that I tested who became a technical writer because he sat next to somebody on a plane who told him that that was a growth area.
Oh,
and
interesting.
So changed the whole course of his life, this little stray piece of advice that this person gave him. And he wasn't very happy doing that. You can get good at anything just based on practice, but you're less likely to really love your job if you're swimming upstream every day instead of being able to go with the flow a little bit. So when somebody signs up to take our test battery, they schedule 3 appointments, and over the first 2 appointments you take 22 different aptitude tests. And then the third session is the review, where we go over the results with you. So during the first 2 appointments, you are taking performance-based experiential tests. So we're not asking you to fill out a questionnaire about what you think you're good at, but actually giving you tests to measure your abilities.
So when we talk about these aptitude tests, that's going to freak some people out, right? I mean, so do you have some examples of what that's all about?
Sure. Yeah, and we're not expecting people to score high on all of the tests.
That's another good point, is how many on average? I mean, I heard or read somewhere that there's like 3 to 6 talents that people have on average.
Yeah, most people have a handful of high scores, significant scores for them that we'll focus on when we go over their aptitude pattern at the end. So, of course, we want you to do your best on every test that we give you, but some of them will probably feel more difficult than others. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with scoring low on something. We just think that's not a natural ability. It's not something that you can't do at all, but it's something that doesn't come as easily to you.
Right. So there's really no reason for people to freak out, is there?
No. And the tests are a little more fun than some other tests that are out there because they are working with materials. Like, I'll give you an example of one of the aptitude tests that we give. This is a dexterity test. We test a number of different things. We test spatial ability, memory, flow of ideas, clerical speed, auditory aptitudes. There's many different aptitudes that we're looking at. But this one is of dexterity, specifically dexterity with small tools. And we ask you to just move all these pins as fast as you can from one side of the board to the other.
Yeah, so that's fun, actually.
It is fun. And we have people scoring high on this who are just naturally quick and accurate at moving the pins. And some people can be very accurate, but they're slower, and so they don't score as high just based on speed. So we see people with this aptitude maybe being able to look at something like dentistry, surgery, maybe working on the bomb squad.
Yeah.
Somebody who has to work with tools and be quick and accurate with tools.
Got it.
Another test, which I'll show you, is one of our spatial tests, spatial ability tests. And this involves me taking this block apart for you, and then you as the client putting it together again as fast as you can. So it measures the ability to, understand how three-dimensional objects fit together, to have an instinct for how they go together, being able to visualize something in your mind, a three-dimensional object in your mind, which can be useful to an architect or an engineer or a carpenter or a doctor, people who work with things and how they fit together, how they work. So at the end of the testing, after you've taken all of the tests, we sit down with you and go over the results, focusing specifically on those few scores that you scored high on. And we talk about what kinds of fields, what kinds of majors, what kinds of roles or tasks within fields tend to use that combination of aptitudes. So this information is based on our validation studies.
So tell me, what's a validation study?
So what we do is, for our research, is we will recruit a group of happy and successful lawyers, say, and see how they score on our tests as a group. And then we look at that combination of scores as the happy and successful lawyer pattern. And if you come in and score similarly, then we feel confident suggesting the law to you as an area to look at.
That's neat.
Yeah. So the testing can be helpful to anyone facing an educational or career decision. We test 14 and up. So we test teenagers and we test adults from 20-somethings just out of college to people planning for retirement and everybody in between. And sometimes the testing can really inspire some dramatic changes. I had a gentleman come in who was in his 40s. He'd been working as a professional musician for his whole working life. Came in, scored very high on all of the music aptitude tests, which you might expect, and showed why he'd had success in that field, but he was ready for a change. And he also scored very high on the spatial test and actually went back to school, became an engineer, and worked up at Boeing.
Cool.
And he was very successful doing that. And he was very happy that he was able to do something else. And he continued to play music as part of his life because he had those aptitudes too, but he had this other aptitude that he wasn't using, and he was able to use it in his new. Yeah, and we do see these dramatic changes. I had another young woman who was working in marketing and found out she had a good medical pattern and went back to school to become an occupational therapist. And so that was another very dramatic change. But sometimes a small change can make a big difference. I had one gentleman come in who was in his 40s, wasn't really in a position to go back to school financially, had family responsibilities, and also was in a pension plan at work, and was working at a package delivery company. He'd been working there for many years as a driver, and found out he had a teaching pattern, a good pattern for communication, informing, educating others, and got involved with the training at his company. So he didn't have to go back to school, and he still was in his pension plan, but he was doing something that he liked a lot more than what he was doing before.
Found a way to really take that skill and those talents and put it to use.
Yeah, exactly.